Today on the deep dive, we're plunging into a story that once seemed as improbable as, well, as hell freezing over.
Right.
That's actually a direct quote from Michael Pachter, a pretty prominent Wall Street analyst.
Yeah, I remember that.
He declared this was more likely than him ever upgrading Netflix's stock rating.
And yet,
And yet, in 2022, he didn't just upgrade it once, he did it twice. It was quite the reversal from someone who'd been such a long-time vocal critic.
it really was a fascinating shift. Pasher, he spent a whole decade as one of Netflix's most persistent bears
Right.
critics.
Right.
And then suddenly he found himself in the minority again, but this time as a bull, while sort of ironically, a lot of other analysts were starting to sound like his old self.
Huh, yeah. The tables turned.
It's just a powerful illustration of how market dynamics and business model innovation, they don't always follow like conventional logic, especially in industries changing this fast.
So what exactly happened to make someone like him do a complete 180? And what does it tell us about, well, the whole entertainment landscape?
Good questions.
That's our mission today. We're going to unpack Netflix's incredible, sometimes really baffling journey from, mailing DVDs in little red envelopes
I, in fact, went.
to becoming this global streaming behemoth. We'll dig into the radical business model innovations they came up with, the huge fights they had with giants like Blockbuster,
Oh, yeah?
and the really surprising twists and turns of their valuation, all while trying to make sense of how, we watch stuff now.
And we've got some great sources for this. We're drawing from some really rich case studies, Harvard Business School, Oxford Executive Institute,
Good stuff.
some specific research on business model innovation, and even like a lively Reddit discussion that really captures how consumers feel about physical media versus streaming today.
Okay, let's dive in. Our story kicks off back in 1997. Netflix started with DVDs by mail, sure, but their real innovation wasn't just the delivery method, was it?
No, not just that. It was a fundamental rethinking of the whole rental model.
And it directly challenged the king of home entertainment back then, Blockbuster.
Absolutely. Blockbuster was dominant. Thousands of stores, over 50 million customers. And their business model really relied heavily on that physical presence and famously, those late fees.
Oh, the late fees. Everyone hated those. They were the bane of every movie lover's existence, right?
Definitely. And Netflix zeroed right in on that specific frustration. That's how they really shook things up.
They brought in what you could call the 3-no system.
Yeah, basically. No expiration dates, no late fees, and no postage fees. All for just one flat monthly subscription.
That was revolutionary compared to paying per rental plus penalties.
And think about it, Blockbuster actually made something like 10% of its revenue just from late fees back in 2004. It was a big part of their income.
Wow.
So Netflix cleverly took what looked like a weakness, the fact you had to wait for the mail, and turned it into a strength.
How so?
Well, by letting you keep movies at home for as long as you wanted, it felt like you always had something there ready to watch. It created this customer satisfaction that Blockbuster, with its rigid rules, just couldn't replicate.
And they didn't stop there, did they? They also had that recommendation system.
Right, their proprietary system, powered by customer ratings. Cinematch, I think it was called.
That seems smart, leveraging their online nature, but was it like a real competitive edge, especially later on?
Oh, absolutely. It was a game changer early on. It helped them optimize their inventory like crazy,
Meaning
it boosted demand for older, maybe lesser-known titles, the long tail,
Quote.
So they weren't so reliant on just expensive new releases.
Ah, okay.
In 2006, new releases were apparently less than 30% of Netflix's rentals. For Blockbuster, it was over 70%.
Big difference.
Huge. This data-driven approach wasn't just about saving money. It fundamentally shaped the user experience. It helped make sure customers always felt like there was something they wanted to watch.
Which brings us to one of the most famous moments in Netflix lore, the Blockbuster pitch in 2000.
Right, the dot-com bust was hitting hard. Netflix is burning through cash.
They needed money fast. About $15 million, right?
Yep, a buyout. So Reed Hastings flies down to Dallas, to Blockbuster's huge headquarters, the Renaissance Tower. He's meeting with CEO John Antioco and their general counsel, Ed Stead.
And Hastings himself called it a shit sandwich pitch, which is pretty telling.
Yeah. The idea was, let Netflix run Blockbuster's online business. You guys stick to the stores.
The sheer nerve and Blockbuster's reaction, it's legendary.
They basically laughed him out of the room.
Just laughed. What was the thinking there? Why dismiss it so completely?
Well, Antioco instead, they were totally convinced the whole dot-com thing was just, overblown.
Yeah.
They thought online businesses like Netflix would just burn cash forever. They couldn't see beyond their brick-and-mortar world.
Wow, they were so anchored in their traditional model.
Completely. They just couldn't see, or maybe didn't want to see, the digital shift that was starting.
The irony is just incredible, isn't it? Blockbuster, sticking to its old ways, just failed to adapt.
They tried, eventually. Remember the no late fees program in 2005?
Vaguely. Did it work?
Well, it cost them about $600 million a year in lost revenue. And they did launch Blockbuster Online in 2004, but it was all just too little too late.
And the end result?
The giant Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy in 2010.
Yeah.
Like a textbook case study of disruption.
Absolutely. Getting disrupted because you just couldn't evolve your own model.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's pivot. Enter Michael Pachter, the analyst who made that hell-freezing over comment. He started covering Netflix way back in 2004 with a sell rating, only $17 a share then.
Right.
And then starting around 2011, he kept an underperform or sell rating on them for a solid decade, became one of their biggest, most vocal critics on Wall Street.
He was definitely persistent.
So beyond just subscriber numbers, what were the fundamental problems Patrick kept pointing out with Netflix's business?
Well, his main bear thesis had a few key parts. First, he was always predicting slowing subscriber growth, especially in the U.S. And he argued that even if they grew internationally, those markets would be less profitable, because of taxes, different regulations, and just the sheer amount they'd have to spend to compete everywhere.
And he wasn't happy with their reporting either.
No, he often complained about their vague regional data. He found it hard to tell where, or even if, they were actually making money in specific areas.
Okay, that makes sense from an analyst's perspective. What else fueled his skepticism?
His biggest point, the central one really, was that their content costs were rising way faster than their revenue.
For the cost of shows and movies.
Exactly. He'd point to things like that Starz renewal deal. The price jumped from like $30 million a year to supposedly $350 million. Netflix balked.
Wow, big jump.
Yeah. And then the later deal with Disney, he saw that as very costly too. He also pointed to debt offerings in 2011 and 2013 as kind of proof they were struggling to cover costs.
Okay, so rising costs. But Netflix made that huge pivot to creating its own content, their originals. How did Pachter view that massive strategic shift initially?
Well, he acknowledged it was happening, obviously, but he was really skeptical they could reach what he called critical mass, sufficient to drive meaningful profitability.
Meaning enough hit shows to actually make serious money?
Kind of. He talked about a spending treadmill, like Netflix just had to keep spending more and more and more on content just to stay competitive, a cycle with no guaranteed profit at the end.
Right.
He'd point to cancellations, like Bloodline or Sense8 back in 2017, as evidence of a, quote, poor original slate. He basically thought they were at the mercy of content owners until they could reliably make their own massive hits.
Got it. And beyond the content itself, Pachter also had some pretty strong words about their accounting and transparency, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. He accused them of really aggressive content capitalization.
I mean, what exactly? In simple terms.
Basically, booking all that huge content spending as an asset on their balance sheet instead of an expense, and then spreading out or amortizing that cost over many, many years, sometimes longer than the show or movie was even relevant.
So it makes their profits look better in the short term.
That was his argument. He estimated it inflated their pre-tax earnings by maybe $25 billion. He had this quote comparing Netflix's $31 billion in capitalized content in 2021 to Disney's $36 billion.
Okay.
And he said something like, someone would pay $36 billion for Disney's content. Do you think anybody in their right mind would pay $30 billion for Netflix's content? It defies common sense.
Ouch. Strong words.
Yeah. And he hated their contribution profit metric, called it disingenuous, because it left out big costs like tech and development, making profitability look better than it maybe really was operationally.
And he wasn't happy when they stopped doing live Q&A on earnings calls.
No, that definitely frustrated him, and likely other analysts too. Made it harder to get straight answers.
Okay, so that's the bear case, laid out pretty clearly over a decade. But there were plenty of bulls on the other side, people seeing a totally different picture for Netflix. What was their argument?
Absolutely, lots of bulls. Analysts like Mark Mahaney at Evercore ISI, for instance. He saw a really positive path forward.
Based on what?
He highlighted their huge head start, their scale like 5 times more subscribers than their closest global competitor back in 2019.
Yeah.
He actually thought international markets could be more profitable eventually.
Why?
Less competition initially, maybe lower cost for local shows.
Yeah.
Then you had Rich Greenfield at BTI.
Yeah.
He stressed how incredibly hard it would be for anyone else to replicate what Netflix has built, especially since Netflix started fresh, without all the licensing baggage that legacy companies like Disney had.
Good point. Starting clean.
And even Doug Anmuth at J.P. Morgan, initially at least, didn't see Disney's streaming service as a major threat.
So, starkly different views. But the market, for a long time, sided with the bulls, right?
Massively. Despite all Pasteur's warnings, all his logical points, Netflix stock just kept climbing. It went past $600 a share at one point.
It delivered something like 2,000% return since 2011.
Yeah, incredible returns. It basically proved Pachter wrong for a very, very long time. He even admitted it himself later, saying something like, "I never thought they would get to 200 million subscribers. I was being logical, and Netflix defied logic."
That's fascinating. It wasn't just about Pachter being wrong, though. It really shows how disruptive companies often play by different rules, doesn't it?
Totally. Market share, future potential. Sometimes the market values that way more than immediate profits,
Yeah.
especially when a company is fundamentally changing how we do things. It challenges what we think of as logical investing.
Exactly. It's like the logic itself gets redefined.
Right.
So, how did Netflix actually pull off this defiance of logic? How did they climb to the top of the streaming mountain? It started with that strategic pivot. While they were still big in DVDs, their engineers were already working on streaming way back in 2005.
Yeah, they were tinkering early,
Hmm.
and then the official streaming service launched in 2007. It started small, though, as a hybrid. Yeah, streaming was bundled with your DVD subscription. They only had about 1,000 titles at first, mostly older stuff.
Mm.
It was a cautious way to test the waters, using their existing customers, not like flipping a switch overnight.
Smart, gradual approach. But then came 2011 and that huge stumble,
Ah.
the Quickster disaster.
Boixer.
They announced they were splitting DVDs and streaming into two separate services, each costing $7.99 a month. The public reaction was not good.
Not good is an understatement. Huge outcry. They lost something like 800,000 subscribers in just 2 months. Reed Hastings had to issue this big public apology.
Right, I remember that apology video. But even after all that backlash, they actually stuck with the split strategy, didn't they? Why push through something so unpopular?
Because they saw the writing on the wall. They
Yeah.
knew streaming was the future, long term. Even if the way they announced the split was clumsy, maybe even arrogant, and even though their stock price tanked, falling nearly 80% from around $300 down to $70 by the end of 2011, sticking to it, despite that pain, was crucial. It forced that clean break, letting the streaming side really grow on its own without being tied down by the old DVD business.
Okay, that makes strategic sense, even if it hurt short term. And then came the next massive shift, becoming a creator, not just a distributor. That was a huge gamble, wasn't it? Spending billions on making shows.
A massive gamble, and one that completely redefined them. It really kicked off in 2013 with their first big original series, House of Cards.
Right, huge hit.
Huge hit, and that opened the floodgates. Think Orange is the New Black, Stranger Things, The Crown. By 2020, they were spending over $17 billion a year on content, putting out more than 1,500 hours of original stuff.
And their secret weapon, or maybe not so secret weapon in all this, was using all that user data, right?
Absolutely, their killer tool. They analyzed everything.
Mm.
What you watch, when you pause, what you search for, even which scenes you rewatch.
Kind of creepy, but effective.
Very effective. They used all that data to inform their decisions about what kind of content to make. House of Cards becoming a global success wasn't just luck. It was heavily influenced by data analysis, showing interest in the original British series, in Kevin Spacey, in David Fincher,
So they were basically trying to guarantee an audience before they even made the show.
trying to minimize the risk, yeah.
Mm.
It was pretty revolutionary. They weren't just guessing anymore. And it forced all the traditional studios to start thinking more about data, too. The whole industry shifted toward being more data-informed, more personalized,
And alongside making content, they were also expanding like crazy globally.
aggressively, into nearly 200 countries.
Scaling a streaming service to that many countries must have been a massive technical challenge. How'd they manage the infrastructure and, making it work everywhere?
They invested heavily in their tech backbone. A big move was migrating most of their infrastructure to Amazon Web Services, AWS. That gave them the scalability they needed. By early 2011, they were already the internet's biggest single source of traffic.
Wow. And internationally, they didn't just push U.S. shows everywhere.
No, that was key. They realized they needed local content, so they started focusing on local productions. Think Sacred Games in India, Money Heist in Spain. They understood local stories would hit differently. Plus, it helped get around the high cost of licensing big global hits everywhere.
Smart. But all that success eventually attracted the big guns, right? The competition.
Oh, yeah. By 2022, the landscape had totally changed. All the major studios woke up. Disney Plus, HBO Max, Paramount Plus, Peacock, they all launched their own services.
And started pulling their own content back from Netflix.
Exactly. So suddenly Netflix was in this intense content arms race, fighting much harder for every subscriber. Their clear dominance was definitely challenged.
Okay, so the competition heats up.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to 2022. A really dramatic year for Netflix, and that surprising turnaround from Michael Pachter.
Right. After a decade of being the biggest bear.
He upgrades them, not once, but twice. Says he now sees Netflix as an immensely profitable, slow-growth company.
Yeah, quite the shift. He even admitted he would have downgraded back in 2011 if he'd known they'd eventually hit 220 million subscribers.
But here's the really ironic part, isn't it?
What's that?
Just as Pachter finally turns bullish, a whole bunch of other analysts start downgrading Netflix in 2022.
Exactly.
Yep.
It was fascinating. The consensus finally shifted, but towards Patcher's old arguments.
And what were they citing?
The very things Pachter had been warning about for years.
Yeah.
Heightened competition, the crazy high content spending, saturation in the U.S. market. Remember Doug Amos from J.P. Morgan?
The one who wasn't worried about Disney Plus initially.
Yeah. He justified his downgrade in 2022 by basically saying Netflix had essentially conceded to every key point of the bear thesis.
So Pachter was a decade early, basically. Everyone else finally caught up to his worries, but only after Netflix had already had that meteoric rise and was starting to face those exact headwinds.
Pretty much. The market finally seemed to align with his logic, but only after Netflix had rewritten the rules for so long.
It really is a powerful story about digital transformation, isn't it?
Absolutely. It shows how vital things like agility, constant innovation, and making tough strategic calls are. Adapting to new tech, shifting consumer habits. Netflix did all of that.
Their whole evolution from just mailing discs to being this data-driven content machine using AI and big data, it's a huge lesson.
Yeah, challenging all the old ideas about profitability and how you value a company in this space.
So where does this leave us, the people actually watching all this stuff? It kind of lands us right in the middle of that ongoing debate. Streaming versus physical media.
Ah, yes, the eternal debate for media lovers. It really resonates with a lot of people.
On one side, you've got the folks who champion physical media like Blu-rays or 4K discs. What's their main argument?
Well, a big one is genuine ownership, permanence.
Right. You buy the disc, you own it. It's not going to disappear from your library because the streaming service lost the rights or just decided to remove it.
Exactly. You're not subject to the whims of studios or streaming platforms.
And it's not just about ownership, is it? Quality is a huge factor for many.
Definitely. Many argue, pretty convincingly, that Blu-rays offer superior uncompressed video and audio quality. Streaming almost always involves compression to save bandwidth.
I saw that comment you mentioned from Reddit, someone watching an old black and white movie, Touch of Evil, on 4K disc and saying it was like being in the theater in 1958.
Yeah, that really captures the feeling for enthusiasts. Plus, physical media is reliable. No buffering, no worrying about your internet speed, no service outages.
Good point. And you often get extras, right? Bonus features, commentaries.
Yeah, and access to a wider range of older or more niche films and shows that might never show up on streaming, or they cycle in and out unpredictably.
Plus, for collectors, there's the joy of having the physical object displaying it, and you can sell it later if you want. Can't do that with a digital stream.
True. And some argue about cost, too. While streaming seems cheap monthly, if it's a favorite movie you'll watch over and over, buying the disc once might actually be cheaper long-term than paying for multiple subscriptions indefinitely.
Okay, so strong arguments for physical. But the case for streaming is obviously powerful too, otherwise it wouldn't have taken over like it has.
Oh, absolutely. The convenience is just undeniable, isn't it?
Yeah. Instant access, huge libraries available on any device, pretty much anywhere. No shelf space needed, no handling discs.
It's incredibly easy.
And for discovering new stuff or just wanting to binge watch a whole series.
Streaming is perfect for that. Trying out shows you wouldn't necessarily buy sight unseen.
And the cost, while debated, is generally seen as more affordable for accessing a really wide variety of content, even if you don't own any of it.
Right. You get breadth, if not permanent depth.
So where do most people land? Is it strictly one or the other?
I think what we see mostly now is a hybrid approach. It seems the most common.
Makes sense.
People use streaming for, convenience, discovering new shows, casual viewing, but then they might still buy physical copies of their absolute favorite movies or shows, the ones they want to keep forever, in the best possible quality and know they'll always have access to.
So using both for different purposes, best of both worlds, maybe.
Perhaps. It reflects that tension between convenience and ownership, access and quality.
What a ride Netflix has been on looking back. Their whole story, it's just such a testament to strategic thinking, constant innovation.
And just being willing to pivot, right?
Yeah,
Even when it caused huge backlash like Quickster or when Wall Street just didn't get it for years.
yeah. It really shows how industries can be completely reshaped by new tech and, frankly, by making really bold bets.
And it underlines how crucial it is for businesses today to be adaptable, to really listen to customers, and to use data and technology smartly to stay relevant.
So it leaves us with a final thought, maybe for you listening. As businesses keep pushing digital convenience further and further, how much value do we as consumers really put on things like true ownership and maximum quality?
Yeah. And what trade-offs are we ultimately willing to make in this constantly changing world of entertainment? It's something we're all navigating.